Dan Allford, and you're listening to Dan's Cadre of Experts, where we bring on people that have been instrumental in my life. We're bringing on an interesting fella today that I have known so long that I can't even remember when we met. Rodger Johnson, welcome to the show.
Good morning. How's everyone?
Hey, so when did we meet?
You came to Ransome. I was on the drawing board, and we were looking.
You're drafting.
We were looking over what we were making offers. You were with a company, I think, was automakers.
Automaker, yeah.
I think it was automakers.
So that's like 85, 6, something like that.
Oh, I don't remember.
See, but before that,
I remember meeting you then.
Okay, well, let's go back. Okay, so you were working for Ransome,
right.
And if anybody that's in the welding industry knows that name,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about Ransome.
Well, you know, Ransome was originally owned by Worthington All Steel Pump, and somebody in the pump business, and they also made cement mixer trucks.
I was unaware of this.
Yeah, they made, and what they did is the cement mix, not just the trucks, but they make those little portable cement mixers. One guy cut off the drum of the cement mixer, put a flat plate on it, because the guys in the shop, they were paid piecework. So,
Old days.
Yeah, so he had to wait for the crane to move his part around. So when he cut the drum off the cement mixer and put a flat plate on it, he put his weldment on that, and he could tilt it and turn it without waiting on the crane.
Okay, back up. So what Ransome did was they built manipulators and positioners, and a manipulator moves a welding torch, and these things are they're like the early version of robots in effect. So there's a motorized manipulator, Cartesian manipulator, that could have a travel of 20 feet or more.
24 foot. We've made some with 30-foot booms. Yes.
So that would be like the robot moving the torch, and then you had a 2-axis part positioner also.
Yeah. Well, the manipulators were dedicated to straight line welding, or reaching in a vessel doing your circumferential welds, where a robot does it with everything.
Well, it does everything. But the reality was some of the early robots in America were actually made by your competitor, Ransome.
Yes.
So
yes.
So a robot's nothing but a manipulator with a brain.
Yeah. So you know how they got in it.
Who's this, Ransome?
Yeah, Ransome. I believe it was the Los Angeles AWS show. And
what year?
I don't. Maybe.
Got to be early 80s.
Oh, no, earlier than that, I think.
70s.
Yeah,
really?
I think late 70s, if anything. We had made a positioner that had a square pad. The weldment had a square pad in it, and then it had 2 circles. And using counters, we would run the ram out to that point, weld the long seam, straight seam. It would lift it up. The table would rotate. It would weld back on the square, and that was our first attempt at making a machine that could weld
sounds like
different
a
locations.
robot to me.
Yeah, but it was all done with counters or.
Oh, I was there. I remember. Limit switches, one-shot timers.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how we started.
Yeah, and so the guys at Aaron says they came over and looked at it, and they said, "Oh, Ransome is 5 years ahead of us,"
Right.
And the fact was, we really weren't interested in that business. We just showing the capabilities. If some guy approached us with something that was interesting enough, we'd try to do it.
Well, competition improves the breed. So y'all were the 2 big players in America. I guess Pangyrus is in there too.
Yeah, Pangyrus.
So the 3 of y'all were the big players in this. And so a lot of this came from submerged arc welding on ships and heavy vessels, where the submerged arc torch has to be held by
a manipulator.
Almost always has to be.
Almost all the time, yeah. And, we did some welds, but material was 8-inch thick, and the sub-arc is the most forgiving welding process there is. So, you want to use something high deposition. We always had success with that. We were the people. We put 3 arcs together and and fill that joint up real quick.
I think that's where I met you, at Savant Offshore Services in the middle 80s, maybe early 80s, because we were using nothing but Ransome manipulators and travel units and positioners to make jackup rigs. We're welding HY100, which is submarine steel, and we're doing it with sub-arc, and I was using your machines.
Okay.
So I don't know if we met back then or not.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
And so you're not born in Texas?
No. I was born in the best town in the United States.
Houston?
On the best street in the best house. You know, I was born in Plainfield, New Jersey.
New Jersey. Where's that at? I mean, is that near New York?
It's about 30, 40 miles south of Newark, New York. It would take me 35 minutes to get into New York from my house.
And when did you go to work for Ransome? Was that right out of school, or?
I graduated high school, went to work in a company called Tile Rubber. They made tile for the floors.
With asbestos, probably.
Yeah, they ain't no telling. and after 9 months there, out of high school, I says, well, what did I learn in 9 months? I learned to stack tile. I said, this is going nowhere. I went upstairs and told the man I was quitting. I'm going to do something, but I'm not going to do this anymore, you know? And I went to a technical school that taught drafting. And I did pretty well in that. I was the number 2 guy there in our class. And
this is back when drafting involved pencils.
Oh, yes. I didn't know what a computer was then. Right. Yeah. And that was probably 68, about, no, maybe even earlier than that, maybe 66, all right, because I graduated high school in 65. And so I went to that technical school, got my degree, got my certificate,
right,
and couldn't get a job.
What's hold up here?
Well, they weren't giving that type of job to people of color at that time, all right? So the boy that graduated number 1 in the class, white fella, he called me up one day. He says, Rodger, you get a job yet? And I said, no. He said, well, I'm leaving the job. I'll put your name in for this job. Really? He said, yeah. So I went and I applied for the job. They liked my things. I went to work for him. When I went to work for him, I walked in. The guy's eyes opened up wide, He says, who are you? I said, I'm going to do your drafting work for you. My name's Rodger Johnson. And I stayed with him for about 7 months. And it was a document conveyor system. They made these little document conveyor systems. You drop a message in that conveyor, and it would take and shoot it down maybe a block to the lady that's supposed to work on it next. That's to keep them from getting up talking to each other.
I see.
And they would shoot it up a couple floors. We did the New York police station.
So is this those pneumatic tubes?
No, it wasn't. Well, they also had that, but they were belts that were about maybe an inch wide, and they had maybe 8 of them. And they had, of course, vertical columns between the 2 of them, and they would shoot it down to whoever they wanted. Everyone had a different color for a different purpose, And the ladies didn't move around all day. They just.
I'm old enough to remember the pneumatic tubes, but I don't remember the conveyor belts.
Yeah, and
so you left these guys.
Yeah, well, the guy liked me, and I went and I was trying to get a job at Ransome. They were advertised in the newspaper, and I applied for them one time, no response. That's before going to this place, right?
So, but now you're credible.
Yeah.
Now you are a draftsman.
Now I am a draftsman. I've worked about 6-7 months, right? And I went in and I interviewed with Ralph Reschke, was his name, the chief engineer there.
Was Ransome based in New Jersey at that time?
Ransome, all the engineering work for Ransome was done in New Jersey.
Okay.
The manufacturing was done here in Texas.
Gotcha.
All right. And he interviewed me and gave me a heck of an interview. I think I left there 8 o'clock that night. Ralph many years later, Ralph would always tell the story of my first interview with him. He said, that kid came in here, he was dressed sharper than I've ever seen anybody dressed. He says he had a seersucker suit on.
And it worked.
Yeah, and I got the job. But look, I went back to tell the guy that I'm leaving. I gave him a 2-week notice. And he says, how much you going to make over there? And I says, the same thing I'm making here. You mean they're not going to give you a raise to leave? I said, no. He says, well, look, I'm going to pay you. I was making $110 a week.
Whoa, big money.
Believe me, it was big money.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, it's a couple dollars an hour. That's
$2.75.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The minimum was half of that.
Yeah. So he says, I'll pay you $140 to stay.
What'd you say?
I said no.
Best call you ever made.
Best decision I ever made, really. It was hard to pay us up that $140, because it put me in another income bracket. I could buy 2 weeks at that time, 2 weeks of groceries for myself, my daughter, and my wife for less than $25.
Yeah.
2 weeks of groceries. That's not happening no more.
No.
Toothpaste costs $25 now. All right. So I went to work for Ransome, and then when I walked in, they were all old white men.
Yeah.
All right. White shirts, black ties, pencils in the pocket with the pencil protector.
Oh, yeah, of course,
protector,
yeah. All the cool guys had one.
And I looked at that and I said, well, I guess I got to get used to this,
Did you get a pocket protector?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to fit in. I'm going to be just like them, And a couple of weeks went by. They all loosened up and started liking me. And I even loosened up. I started coming in colored shirts and plaid shirts like that. And then I influenced them. After a while, they started wearing different color. But they were all... It was all, first of all, it's what I wanted to do all my life. Because when I was a kid, I used to make models and make boats and planes and crash them, out of the balsam wood.
See, I knew we were similar.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I love doing that stuff, And when I went to Ransome, I was doing the same thing I was doing when I was a kid, but
just
on a much bigger scale.
Right.
Yeah. And I never forget, it was in the early years, we had done a job for GE in Schenectady.
Power plants or what? What were you doing?
They were welding nuclear valves and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
All right. And I'm telling you something. When I walked into Ransome, I knew nothing about welding.
What? It's a welding company.
Yeah, I didn't know that. All I saw was mechanical things to move things, and that's what I wanted to do. And they sent me, they sent the chief engineer up because they couldn't get these two pieces to synchronize. And
if you have two headstocks.
No, I had a positioner, a big positioner.
Right.
Right. And I had a ring that would hold that other part of the vessel,
you said nuke valves.
Yeah, that would hold the valve body, and it welding to something that's sitting on the tape on the positioner, and you want to rotate them.
And they got to be completely coordinated.
Oh yeah, and it wouldn't work. All right, so since I drew the electrical.
It was your fault.
They sent me up there with Ralph Reschke, my chief engineer, and we were going to go and make sure that the wiring was right, And a big plant. I don't know. Have you ever been to that Schenectady plant?
No.
Man, it's the biggest machinery I have ever seen for manufacturing anything you want. If you went all the way up on the top and looked down, people look like ants on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, them lathes must have had maybe swing radius is 8-9 foot. Unbelievable. Never been. I understand the place is completely closed.
Yeah,
now.
we're shuttering our industry in America. Something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah, something's wrong with that picture. Is right.
So this is a two coordinated motion. We used to call that master slave. Did you?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's
yes,
no
sir.
longer correct.
Well, yeah. Well, it depends where you're at. But yeah, and I went up there, and I know a couple years later, I was at a welding show, and one of the guys that worked in the factory was talking about this guy he would climb up the manipulator, run out on the boom. He said, "I'd never seen a guy move so fast in my life." Well, I was a young fella then.
No, that was you.
I didn't tell him that I was me, but it was me. But he described it to a T. It was the most difficult place to get something done because it was completely unionized.
Yeah, right.
And if you wanted to take that motor off, it might take 2 days to take that motor off.
Right. I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
So, and for the people that are unfamiliar with Ransome, I mean, Ransome, y'all have built tens of thousands of these manipulators and positioners, and they're still running.
Oh, yeah.
I still see them out there. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to quit running.
Oh, no, I don't think so either. You can take them out of the service, do a little bit of nothing to it,
Right.
Paint it up, and it looks like it's brand new, and it runs like it's brand new,
Yeah. And they're heavier than the ones that are built nowadays.
That's right.
That's kind of rough, isn't it? When you're competing with the stuff that you made 20 years before.
Absolutely.
Is that what happened? I mean,
well, it created a business for some people buying used
but that
machinery.
wasn't you. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish Ransome had gotten into that.
Refurbishing.
Yeah, refurbishing and because it's a tremendous business. You talk to these guys that do that, it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, a bunch of my friends do it.
Yeah.
No, you ought to feel quietly proud that the stuff you built when you were a little baby draftsman is out there still running, making parts in America.
Yeah.
All right, so here you are drafting, designing electrical systems in New Jersey. How'd you get to Houston?
Well, what happened is all the engineering was done in New Jersey, right? And manufacturing was done. So when there was problems that occurred, when you make big stuff, nothing's perfect all the time. Somebody go up and say, "Hey, man, we need to change that," Mm-hmm. And we had a big job. I think that job was with Brown and Root at the time. And
big Texas company.
Yeah, right out off of Federal Road.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was a nice job, and it had a few problems, and they wanted to send me, but they wouldn't send me. And one of the reasons being because back in the late 60s, early 70s, it was difficult for a black man to travel in this country.
Yeah, and it's hard for you to be credible.
Yes.
But that's one reason I like you is you've always been a great ambassador.
I tried. Yeah.
So somehow or another you got down here anyway.
Yeah. Well, what happened was that job had a lot of problems, and so Harry Smith, which was the owner of Big Three Industries, he told my boss Galton, "Why don't you just bring the engineering bring everything here to Houston, and we won't have to have people going back and forth and all these problems. We got the engineering right on top of manufacturing."
Back up. What was Big Three, and how were they connected to Ransome?
Well, Big Three was they made industrial gas manufacture, and they sold welding equipment, and they had an exclusive with Lincoln Electric. Nobody else could sell Lincoln Electric equipment in Texas, parts of Louisiana, Oklahoma, Hawaii, and I think parts of California too.
And that's huge because heavy weldments are sub-arc, and most of the sub-arc back then was Lincoln.
It was, but see, back in them days, if you went to a welding distributor, he was dedicated to a welding company.
Right,
so
right.
you had Union Carbide, which became Lindy,
Yep, which became Esau.
Yeah, you had Miller.
Right.
You had Hobart.
Yep.
Well, you couldn't buy Lincoln from a Hobart dealer.
Nope.
Lincoln didn't tolerate that. Now you walk into a welding distributor, he'll sell you what you want.
Yeah. They'll no longer exclusivity.
Yeah.
All right. So they were exclusive on Lincoln. Were they exclusive for Ransome? Big Three?
Oh yeah, they owned us. See what?
Well, they owned it.
Yeah. See, when I think it was 1959. This is before my time. All right.
I was 1 year old.
Yeah. See, but I think it was 1959. Harry Smith was buying things. You know, he anything that he think could help him out, and he was heavy manufacturing being done in the Houston area. He sold a lot of Ransome stuff. So he bought Ransome from Worthington All Steel Pump.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, he bought it.
That was the 50s.
In the 50s, I want to say 59. I'm not sure. I want to say 59. Yeah.
You mentioned his name before, and you told me something I was unaware of. So, you know, you're the only other person I met that realized that the first American Welding Society trade show convention was right here in Houston, Texas.
Yep.
And what I didn't realize it was Smith was instrumental in that.
Yeah, he loaned them all the forklifts and everything to move stuff around, to load it in. He did that, and I think it was at a big hotel down south, just south of the medical center. They have now torn that.
Shamrock.
Shamrock.
That was
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe it was at the
back.
Shamrock. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Smith buys Ransome,
Right.
and he talks them into. Well, it wouldn't be hard to talk him into moving engineering if he owned it.
You know what he did is he built a beautiful facility for. Well, he wanted the manufacturing in Houston, so that he got. All right? But he built a beautiful facility in South Plainfield, New Jersey, for Ransome Engineering, and we did specialty equipment there. You know, like we had got into this vertical welding thing
for big oil field tanks.
Oil field tanks. That we did that in Houston. I mean, in South Plainfield, New Jersey. The girth welders for welding.
They call them 3 o'clock welders.
3 o'clock welders.
Where you're actually welding in the 2G position with submerged arc.
Right.
You shouldn't be able to do that, you know.
Yeah, but as long as you can keep the flux in the place, you can weld.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So.
But then I've seen the offices in Houston. Those were pretty nice too.
Yeah, it was all right. But I'm gonna tell you something. The office in New Jersey was fabulous.
Was better.
Yeah, it was fabulous. It wasn't a big facility, but it was fabulous. And after buying us, they bought Temple Stick.
Did they?
Yeah, Temple was. They built in addition to the building that I worked in South Plainfield to house Temple, and
those are the guys that made the sticks that were like temperature crayons. You mark on a part, and if it melts, and it's actually a very accurate way to measure temperature, which is critical in industry, you know, for preheat and welding. And not telling you anything, I'm talking to my audience here, for preheat and interpass temperatures.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, it's funny. I know the guy that bought it from them.
Yeah.
Koza,
yeah.
Yeah, he ended up small world, huh?
Yeah, he split it up with him and another guy went together on it. He split it up and gave it to let the other guy walk away with it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Small world. Huh? All right. So when did you end up in Houston, though? When did they decide that you could cope down here?
1973. The Civil Rights Bill was signed in 1965, so I came in 73. And believe me, they were still trying to get used to integration.
And you told me that they used to have colored restrooms.
Yeah. Yeah. Every place had it.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen it.
You better not go into the front bathroom if you're black. You know.
But those are gone by the time you got here, right?
By the time I got here, they were gone. And Harry Smith, I understand, listening to the guys at the shop, Harry Smith came and took them down himself.
Good for him.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you still faced a few challenges down here.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, because one apartment that I lived in was Foxhall Apartments on I-10.
I know that, right on I-10.
Yeah,
on
right
South
on
side.
I-10. And I wanted to be close to where I work. So
that was close.
That was close, all right? Mm-hmm. And we used to race home to get, if there was a vacant apartment, there was a vacant spot, parking spot. So me and the other people that lived there would race to get that unattended, and they towed my car out of it one night, and I went over. You remember when Cameron Iron was on Silver?
Yeah, so that's just across the highway.
Well, this guy had a tow truck driver had a storage place right there across the street from it, and I went in raising hell to get my car back. He held a gun on me and said, "In, you better get out of here." Well, I'm here. You see?
Yeah, you live.
I hurried up and left. But the next day, I told my boss what happened. He went over and took care of it.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we've come a long ways.
Yeah.
So Houston is one of the biggest users of welding wire in Texas.
Sub-arc welding wire.
Yeah, sub-arc welding wire. So this is somehow or another, this area ended up being like central for welding. Mm-hmm. And you and I've been in the welding business in Houston. You are longer than me. Mm-hmm. I think I started in '79. Mm-hmm. But and it's still one of the primary users of welding supplies here.
And there's welding shops all over this town.
And it's good. I mean,
there's some big ones too. Some big ones.
And so a lot of that technology that started here ended up going other places. And so we developed the technology in Houston, then ship it elsewhere. Tell me some of your travels. I know that you've been around.
Well, my first trip out of the country was to Iran.
Really?
Yeah, and the Shah was still there. All right, and 1976, I think it was, for the company. My first trip out of the country. And they said, "You're too young to go by yourself." So they hired this guy named Pete Scheller. He was formerly one of the top engineers for Union Carbide welding.
Yeah.
And he just had a good sense of everything, And he was old. And we got out there on that job in Isfahan, and the machines were all sitting there waiting for us, buried in sand, damn near, So you had to get them out of the crates, get them out of the sand, get the sand off them, set them up, weld with them, and
what were y'all building?
The oil tanks. They had 26 very large oil tanks to build.
Okay, so these are like the 200-foot diameter tanks.
Yeah, and they had we sold them Sand 1000s, the motor generator ones.
Yeah. I did a podcast on that recently, where back before full wedge bridge rectifiers were a thing, then we spun a DC generator with an AC motor. Yeah. That was the Lincoln, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the nice thing about that machine, the voltage didn't fade.
No, it was one of the best welding machines out there.
Yeah, the voltage didn't fade, man. It gave you that steady voltage. Out there in the sun, 200-foot cables, it wasn't unbelievable to lose 5-6 volts.
Right, and when you think about it, we're only welding at 30 or something, so that's a huge percentage.
Yeah, no, but they were welding at I want to think it's 52 volts.
Oh, okay. I'm
52
wrong.
volts, 515 inches per minute, 52 volts. I'll never forget that, because the minute the voltage started fading, I knew somebody had a poor ground connection or something like that. And
it wasn't the machine.
It wasn't the machine. So I just had to go look at how they're setting the grounds up and give them a lecture, and everything went well.
So you'd weld all the floor plates, and then you'd weld.
We weld the floor plates
flat
with LT7s.
Right.
Yeah. So another Lincoln product. Yeah.
Those little tractors.
Yeah.
And then, but you're doing the vertical wells on these tanks. That may be 30 foot tall, something like that.
The tanks.
Yeah.
No, they 55 foot tall.
55 foot tall.
Yeah.
And you'd weld all those vertical seams with those.
Yeah, but until the plate got too thin, anything less than 3/8.
They did by hand, I suppose.
Yeah, we didn't want to. You slap that up there by hand, weld it just as quick.
She did the heavy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you do the 3 o'clock welder was the one we mentioned earlier that would run all the way around the vessel.
Right.
It hung on that upper edge, didn't it?
Right. And it, normally they have to build scaffolding on that tank, and it's wood scaffolding, and the guy's 55 foot up in the air, and he's trying to weld, and they got all kind of safety stuff there, but never enough.
Yep. People will fall.
That's right. Never enough.
Plus, sub-arc's 10 times faster than a human.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where on a hot day,
20 times faster.
on a hot day in Isfahan, you might get 2 pounds an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
But sub-arc.
Sub-arc can give you 30 pounds an hour. 22.
Oh no, the one you built for me for the jack-up rigs, 50 pounds an hour.
Yeah.
That was 2 wires and powder.
Yeah. Right.
What's interesting though is the technology we were using to weld that HY100. At 50 pounds an hour. When I go look at some of the government projects welding the same material, they're still stick welding.
Yeah.
40 years later, we were welding.
I did a job at Lime, Ohio, the M1 tank.
Yeah, the tank shop.
All right. Now, at that particular time, they were trying to bring robots in. They was the early robots, and I forget the guy's name, but he was a real pusher. He was going to get robots in there. At that particular time, our manipulators was doing 90% of the welds.
Yep.
But they were only getting 10% of the credit. But eventually they got all the kinks or devised new ways of welding sub-arc on those tank bodies. And now I think it's almost all robotic now.
Were you actually manipulating those tank bodies with your
we would
positioners?
head stock.
Or do a drop center?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so everybody that's in the audience, when you want to weld, if you want to weld fast, then you have a large molten weld volume, and that only works in the flat position.
In the flat position.
So that means you have to put the whole tank body on this drop center positioner, and imagine being able to rotate it in 2 axes. That's what you guys were doing.
Right.
A lot of work, a lot of heavy equipment, but what it allows you to do is weld 10 times faster.
10 times faster. Now, I remember, I think it was the Bradley tank.
I worked on those.
Somewhere in California.
It was in San Jose.
San Jose.
I built some of those machines.
All right. Now, we first came in there with a headstock and tailstock positioner for welding up this tank. And one thing about the military manufacturers, they have a very structured way of doing things,
right.
And they would put the whole body of the Bradley tank in there, which was an aluminum structure.
Right. An inch and a half thick. It's very thick.
And they'd weld it, and they'd tilt it in position so the guys could get there and hand weld it, And
then I turned it into buried arc. So we could do a 3/4 inch fillet in 1 pass.
Yeah. Wow.
But same as sub-arc. You have to be able to position it flat.
See, what happened is those machines, we sold them in the early years. How old is that Bradley tank?
I assume it's early 70s.
All right. So somebody changed the method of manufacturing the Bradley tank, but they didn't reconsider that you needed to do something with the positioning company. So they removed the top half of the tank.
Right, the turret.
Yeah. And they weld everything else. But the bottom half was actually overloading our equipment because the center of gravity changed.
Ah.
Yeah?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's lighter, but the CG was wrong.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And it actually overloaded the tank, the positioner tremendously, right? Because this guy says the piston broke, the pinion broke off.
Ouch. That's dangerous.
And it went around 4 times.
I don't think so.
I don't. And that story, they started that story. They were sticking to until I told them Newton's law says for every reaction there's an equal but opposite reaction.
Yeah, if they could make that happen, we could generate power.
I'm telling you. So when I told them that, everybody calmed down, and then started looking at what the root of the problem was, the fact that, they needed to either counterweight it or put the top back on the Bradley tank, one of the two.
I moved those last machines out of California because California's too cool to manufacture. Moved them to Pennsylvania, and some of them are still running there.
Yeah, yeah.
You ought to feel quietly proud.
Oh, yeah, I've been into Quonset Point, and we designed them some equipment there. That stuff is still there.
Oh yeah, no, I was recently in one of those plants. There's still Ransome there.
And tell you something, we quoted the job to the Russians, because the Russians wanted to manufacture 32 nuclear reactors a year, was their goal.
What year was this?
And like 76, 78, 79.
So that's not Russians, that's USSR still.
Yeah, communists. It was communists when I went there. Man, what a difficult time traveling.
So you're
there.
building nukes for the communists?
No, we weren't building them. No, they told us what they wanted. We quoted on it, and we got the order.
Did you check with the State Department?
Yeah. It was all above board, In fact, I think the FBI came and talked to Galton a couple times.
I'll be.
Yeah. But I went to do the installation, And
what city was that in? You recall?
Leningrad the first time.
Leningrad.
Yeah. In fact, so I didn't have the exposure to too much of Russia. Galton had him fly me into Helsinki, and then Helsinki to Leningrad, which is a short flight. But I could have instantly, when I got to Helsinki, and I got on the Russian flight.
Aeroflot.
Aeroflot, yeah. When I got on that flight, instantly you could see the difference. Communism. And there was no amenities or anything on the plane. It's just little fat stores. It's just totally different.
And you got it installed and it ran.
Yeah, and in fact, what I found out that they actually the plant was called the Jorsk plant, and they manufactured their submarines in there. Now they made sure I didn't see much of.
Now they didn't use your stuff on subs. I bet they did.
I don't know, but they manufactured that. Originally was a manufacturing facility for submarines, and they kept an eye on me, and I couldn't walk around certain spots. After about a week or so, a Russian guy came up to me. He says, "Your equipment will work forever."
He was right.
And he says that ESAB equipment, because ESAB sold them some super sophisticated stuff at the time. He says, day to day, we can't keep it running, And so actually, when I got there, he says, that wire feeder is no good, And I said, why are you saying it's no good? He brought me an old Union Melt wire feeder.
Old Lincoln.
Yeah, no.
Oh, that
Union Carbide.
That was a Union Carbide.
Yeah, that was Union Carbide. Brought it to me, and it must have had a 5 horsepower motor.
Right.
A 5 horsepower motor, 20, 30 years old back then, was huge, And he says, this very good.
Yeah. That's funny. So, and yet Ransome went out of business. What happened? Is there a lesson? I always worry about going out of business, so I'm looking for these lessons.
No, Ransome didn't go out of business. What happened to Ransome was they brought in a manager that embezzled some money.
That's never good.
Yeah,
I didn't hear this story.
Yeah. Well, they did 2 things wrong. I was promoted to be the general manager and we had the years that I was there. We had very good years, and they had I don't know if they had a guy that they wanted to find a place for him. He was in management, but Ehrlich was going to let him go, so they put him over me, and that's when things started changing. They took on jobs that I would have never, ever considered.
See, there's the lesson. I always look at how people succeed or fail, and it's not uncommon for people to bite off more than they can chew.
You got to know when to say no.
Yep, you can't build what you don't understand.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, some things you can attempt if you feel it's within your grasp.
Yeah, you're always looking to push yourself.
But see, when I had times when you were hungry, suddenly the things you said no, you would take a second
you
look
got to
at.
be a lot more agreeable.
Yeah. But he didn't work out, and they gave him a big party and sent him home.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But the damage was done.
Yeah, but they wouldn't give me the position back.
Oops.
All right, so they went out and hired somebody else, and
Wasn't very ethical.
not at all. And they must not have done any investigating on this guy because he did it other places.
Oh, that's terrible. Because there's you probably had a couple hundred people working there at one point.
Well, I think during my time there was 52.
Oh, 52.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
52.
So
and I mean, we've had more than that, but a steady crew, we had 52.
And then at some point, it got sold at auction, right?
Well, I think they made an attempt to sell it off. This is Air Liquide now owning it, all right? Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of what Big Three had that Air Liquide didn't want to put their hands on. You know, they made they had a sandblasting company.
But that has potential liability.
Yeah, so they got rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
They had dialogue. Some find the drilling bit in the weld and
well logging
and somehow bring it back out, that sort of thing. And there was several other ones that they had. Big Three, it's a pretty big company, and they, you know, Harry Smith. He liked to make money, and he did a good job.
But it sounded like you spent it. He hired people. He built buildings. That's my kind of people.
He did, and he had a knack for hiring former military guys, and so the maintenance guy there was a former military guy. That guy black guy, he got 3 of his kids in West Point. Graduated from West Point. Mm-hmm. You know, so Harry Smith made sure his people did well.
Ultimately, didn't Ransome buy up the blueprints? Or
yeah, I was going by that time.
You were out.
Yeah. I went to China to do a sales job, and then I left there and I came home, stayed 4 days, went to Saudi Arabia, did a sales job, and came back home. During the time, me and that new manager, we weren't hitting it off too well. I did an assessment of where I was in life, and I said,
time to go.
Time to go. Exactly.
You retired.
Yes. And I stayed home for 5 months, and Oprah pissed me off. Daytime TV sucked, you know?
I could have told you that.
And so I went to a welding show in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. It's AWS Fabtech.
Yeah. So I used to rub shoulders with everybody. I knew most people that were in the booths because over my time period from the 60s to year 2000, I was next to a different company every year, so we all got to know each other, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that's when you went to work for Radiart.
Well, let me tell you the story about that. I went to I ran into Mohammed Osman, our Egyptian distributor.
Okay.
I said, "Hey, Mohammed, how you doing?" He says, "Come, let's go get a smoke." So I went outside with him so he could smoke, you know. And we're standing there talking, laughing about, you know, things you used to do, what's going on in Egypt nowadays, and he said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Me, I'm retired." "You're too young to retire." I said, "Well, that's true, but I've decided that I'm going to stay retired at that time."
Right.
So there's another guy over there. Just kept looking at me, and he finally got the nerve to come over. He said, I know you. What's your name?" I said, "Sir, who are you with?" my name's Rodger Johnson. Who are you with? He says, Ready Arc.
Largest welding rental company in America, right?
Right.
Okay.
So he says, you're retired. You going to be here for a while? I said, yeah. He went off, made a phone call, came back. He says, my boss wants to meet with you. You know, he's in Canada right now, but he'll be in Houston next week. And I went and met him at Papado's over on the east side of town for lunch.
Yep.
And we talked. We all were laughing about, they were I was telling them about my experiences at Ransome. We're all laughing, and they liked doing business with me when I sold them those VUPs. And
what's a VUP?
Vertical welding system.
Okay. For the tank. For the tanks.
Yeah. And we talked and laughed, and when it's time getting to depart, he says, hey, we want you to come to work for us. And I says, yeah. And he says, when can you start? I said, hey, I'm not sure I want to go back to work, And he reached down in the table in his briefcase. He says, look, I already put this offer together for you. You take a look at it and you call me. So I called him and I said, yeah, I'll go to work for you.
That's pretty flattering.
Yeah. And it was fabulous. Working for Ready Arc was fabulous.
Well, it's fun. And we got to work together. Because anytime you got a project that y'all didn't have equipment for, I'd build it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and not just that. Rental business, I didn't know it existed, first of all.
It's huge, though.
Unbelievable.
It's a way to cut capital cost. It's more common than people realize.
Yeah. The rental business. So when I got at Ready Arc and saw what Ready Arc wanted from me is, when we have a customer that has something specialized, we want to be able to give them short-term product that we can put it together for them, get them welding, and 6 months later, they send it back to us. And we had a lot of success.
Well, the funnest one that you and I did when you were at Ready Arc was, remember Plumber? I've forgotten the name of his company. Inpro?
Impro, yes.
Yeah, and so he's building some vessels. What were they? 4 inches thick, and they're spherical. And he needed to cut holes in them, and all the holes had to be parallel in this 40-foot diameter. And he was assuming he could do it with simple machinery, and it wasn't a simple machine job.
That's right.
You figured it out. We did it with robots, and I sold him holes for $200 a piece. I don't know what you charged him.
Yeah, and that was the one way out on I-10.
Yeah, they're in Channelview, and so we actually dropped a robot into his floor. And then started cutting these holes. So it was flame cutting. I remember he didn't even have propane gas. We're having to cut with natural gas. You didn't tell me that when we started.
Yeah.
That was a great project, though. And you made money. I made money. He got 40 holes cut.
Right. And we did a lot of that. And one year I'm in Ready Arc's booth, which at the time was Air Gas.
Right.
In their booth, and I ran into one of my old customers from Ransome. And I says, Ernesto, what are you doing these days? And he says, nothing. He said, what are you doing these days? I said, I work for this company. I said, we rent welding equipment and manipulators, turning rolls. You need it, we get it there. And I got the biggest order from a company in Mexico called Tales Naval de Golfo in Veracruz. Which was a fabulous little town on the water, and it was a nice place to be. So it was, every time I go there, it was almost like going on vacation. Yeah.
Sounds like you and I both had excellent careers in this business right here in Houston, Texas.
The welding industry has been great to me. Met some good people, met some horrible people.
That's how people are.
One time, I would go to Lincoln quite frequently because
up in Cleveland.
Yeah, because Big Three and Lincoln were like this, and I'm sitting down with their sales guy, and we're talking at lunch, and I said, "Hey, anybody have a list of their world's worst customer?" You know, one of the guys says, "Yeah." And I said, "Who is it? And where is he?" And he told me. I said, "That's my guy."
At least y'all agreed.
Yeah. I said, no, and everybody, a couple other guys picked other people. But me and him dealt with the same guy on a different scale. It turned out to be, I ain't going to mention the company.
No.
It turned out to be the same guy. Yeah, he used to make me laugh.
So if you go back to that, remember you said that you couldn't even get a job because you're the wrong color.
Yes.
If you could go back and tell Rodger Johnson back then something, what would you tell him?
Get a little more education.
Really? So your certificate was not enough. Well, it seemed to work.
No, you know something? Working at Ransome in that engineering department, I went to college every day.
Right.
You know, those guys, whatever they developed and learned in college was being dumped on me. And I'm going to tell you, there was a lot of nights I went home and found a book, or went to the library and found a book.
Try to catch up
with this guy, because I'm saying, wow, man, you know, or a couple times I'm saying, that guy's telling me something wrong. I got to look that up, you know, and there's some projects that I worked on. I would call the engineering school at Rutgers and let the professor talk to the professor for a while, and they'd help me out. I got the job done. So,
that's pretty bold.
Yeah. But I did it a couple times.
Interesting. But it just wasn't economically possible for you to take 4 years off to.
That's right.
It all worked out.
Yeah. Oh no, I did. I think I did extremely well. You know, back when my goal was to make $10,000 in 1 year, I went and bragged to my father, "Dad, I made $10,000 this year." Boy, you lying. I showed him my W-2 form. He had never made $10,000 in his life. And we lived good, as far as I'm concerned, growing up. We lived good. Yeah.
I'm sure that pleased him.
Yeah. Oh, no. He had a look on his face. You know, my father was a lieutenant in World War II, which was unusual. You didn't get many black lieutenants in World War II. So he did the Polynesian Islands built. He was responsible for building airstrips on almost all those islands.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, my dad parachuted into France with a bazooka.
Oh.
Not a good job.
Not a good job at all, because you're a target in the air.
They shoot
when
you
you
while
get
you're
down,
floating.
if you can't hide fast enough.
How would you like to go up against tanks with nothing but a bazooka? That was his job.
Oh, man.
We got it made, don't we?
Oh, man.
Well, this has been fun. What do we miss?
Well, you did talk about the first AWS show, right? Did you mention that?
Right here in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And that was Smith that brought it in.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Of course, that was before I was born. That's 50. We looked it up, didn't we?
53. I think you looked it up.
Yeah.
You said it was 53. Yeah. But, you know, the one thing about, I never realized what would be in front of me when I started that job. All I wanted to do was get on that desk and draw those parts and get my chief engineer to okay it, you know? And it was a tremendous trip.
Oh, yeah, I'm the same boat. I remember drawing things with pen and paper on a drafting board. Yeah. And I remember my teachers they usually wrote comments about too many smudges.
Hey.
So I was tickled when I finally learned how to run CAD.
But there was a guy that sat in front of me, old guy, Al Smith was his name, all right? And Al, he was a good draftsman, but he had tremendous engineering knowledge. And he would tape a drawing down and look like by the time he taped it down, he was taking it up. I said, I want to be like Al.
Yeah.
And he was a knowledgeable guy, and he great to work with. All the guys, when I went in, they were all great to work with. It took a little while for them to warm up, but it was a great place to work.
Well, Rodger, we got stories to go on forever, but I really appreciate you coming on today. And as long as you promise to come back and do it again.
Just let me know. This was easy.
Oh yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, and so I'm convinced.
It's easy to talk about what you like doing.
Yeah, 92, 2003. I think I've known you 40 years. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So your words to Rodger, little Rodger, and the kids today is more engineering.
More engineering.
More school.
More school. Definitely.
Okay, I'm with you.
Definitely.
Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll get you on again.
All right.